the most brilliant planet in our night sky is, in truth, the universe's most perfect lie. This grand illusion triggered one of the darkest chapters of the space age. While America celebrated its victory on the moon, the Soviet Union became obsessively, almost frantically, haunted by our planetary neighbor. They quietly poured billions of dollars into launching dozens of gargantuan machines, armored in monolithic titanium, solely to pierce through that impenetrable fog. Why did a military superpower so stubbornly hurl cosmic tanks into an unknown world? Cold War conspiracy theories once whispered a chilling scenario. Soviet intelligence had glimpsed something at the bottom of that ocean of mist. An invulnerable strategic outpost, or a perfect world to serve as a final sanctuary? But when those steel titans finally touched the ground, what they found was more brutal than any hypothesis. To pierce that shroud of mist, the Soviet Union knew they couldn't send fragile satellites. They forged cosmic tanks. Weighing 5 tons, these machines encased their electronic brains within monolithic titanium spheres, material born to build the world's deepest diving nuclear submarines. In Moscow, engineers stress-tested them in extreme hyperbaric chambers, proudly believing that human metallurgy could conquer any risk. But they were wrong. The atmosphere of Venus is not a problem to be solved. It is a physical execution chamber. The metallic pride of the Soviets was, in truth, nothing more than toys about to be gnashed by nature. To witness the exact moment that pride is utterly crushed, we will join the Venera probes in a terminal freefall. The descent into the floor of hell begins now. The Soviet Union entered this exploration with the innocence of those who had never known hell. The first 3 missions, Venera 1, 2, and 3, never even caught a glimpse of their enemy. They were cooked alive by thermal failures, lost in the vacuum, or plunged into silence before they could even pierce the upper atmosphere. Venus rejected every frail visitor. It wasn't until 1967 that Venera 4 made history, bracing itself to dive through the pale yellow haze. At an altitude of 50 kilometers, the first signals transmitted a flicker of false hope. The environment at this cloud layer seemed temperate, with pressure and temperature mimicking a warm day on Earth. But that was nature's most sadistic deception. This murky veil, tens of kilometers thick, was utterly void of water. It was woven from concentrated sulfuric acid, a corrosive fluid with the same metal-eating bite as battery acid. The cruelty lay in the weather mechanics. The Venusian sky does have rain, but the laws of physics have twisted it into an endless torture. These acidic downpours are never permitted to touch the ground. As the acid droplets fall, the searing heat billowing from the surface boils the mid-air at an altitude of 25 kilometers. The acid evaporates back upward, creating a perpetual chemical loop suspended in the sky. Venera 4 wasn't flying through a cloud. It was free-falling through a gargantuan acid bath. Its metallic skin began to be gnawed away, and external sensors shrieked in the face of corrosion. But this wall of acid was merely the outermost defense. As Venera 4 sank deeper, leaving the suspended rain behind, it was about to encounter a crushing engine, one that would forever stifle its breath and sever its lifeline before it could even sight the floor. Past the suspended acid rain, The probe continues its plunge into the darkness. But from an altitude of 15 kilometers down, a maddening physical phenomenon begins to take hold. Every law of earthly aerodynamics that Soviet engineers once hailed officially becomes scrap paper. The deeper the machine sinks, the more the space around it distorts. The Venusian atmosphere is 96% carbon dioxide. Under the colossal weight of gravity, this massive volume of CO2 is compressed so severely that it transcends the boundaries of ordinary matter. At this depth, the sky is no longer a gas. Brutal pressure has forced it into a supercritical fluid, a physical monstrosity possessing the expansion of a gas, but the crushing density of a liquid. At this moment, external pressure on the hull skyrockets to 92 times that of Earth's surface. To visualize this brutality, the pressure crushing the titanium shell is equivalent to being submerged 1 kilometer deep in the Pacific Ocean without a pressure chamber. You cannot use a parachute to land in an environment like this. When the early Venera generations attempted to deploy their chutes, they realized a horrific truth. They weren't falling through air. They were sinking slowly into an invisible ocean. The drag was so thick that the descent became an agonizing crawl. Consequently, those proud hulls were buckled and flattened like empty beer cans by the atmospheric press, dying mid-air before they could even sight the floor. Venus taught humanity a bloody lesson in the power of physics. To have any chance of survival, the Soviets were forced to rewrite the entire concept of exploration. By the time of Venera 9, they made a radical decision. They discarded the main parachute system entirely. They redesigned the probe to resemble a deep-sea bathyscaphe, equipped with a solid steel drag disc at the top. This disc didn't generate lift to fly. It functioned as an aerodynamic anchor, utilizing the very density of the supercritical atmosphere to brake, allowing the 5-ton mass of metal to slowly sink to the bottom of the abyss. But even as this great submarine braced itself against thousands of tons of pressure to touch the ground, what welcomed it was not victory. The thud of landing was merely the starting pistol for a countdown to a far more sadistic torture. The 5-ton submarine finally strikes the fractured basalt surface. But the thud of metal hitting the ground is no triumphal fanfare. On Venus, a successful landing is merely the starting pistol for a lethal countdown. The titanium hull, once the pride of the Soviet Union, is now officially a prisoner at the bottom of a CO2 ocean. While the crushing pressure strangles it from without, its ultimate end will come from a far more sadistic torment. This place is a thermal trap, locked at a staggering 475 degrees Celsius. It all stems from a physical catastrophe known as the Runaway greenhouse effect. The massive atmosphere acts as a perfect insulating blanket. It permits solar radiation to enter, but absolutely refuses any path for heat to escape. Contrary to our visions of a chaotic hellscape, the surface of Venus is void of howling gales or shredding storms. Its cruelty lies in a thick, stagnant stillness, motionless in a heat fierce enough to liquefy lead, tin, and zinc. Any machinery cast into this abyss will be boiled from the inside out. But the Soviets refused to yield. In 1982, they hurled their most resilient machine yet into this pit, Venera 13. Armored to the teeth and carrying the most sophisticated liquid nitrogen cooling system of its time, it was a desperate bid to buy time against the inevitable. But against the ruthlessness of nature, human preparation was tragically frail. That great cosmic tank gasped for breath for exactly 127 minutes. In those 127 minutes of terminal agony, just before the heat cooked the circuit boards into a metallic soup and the pressure welded the camera lens shut forever, Venera 13 managed to open its eyes and transmit historic color images. The first color panoramic images from the surface of Venus by Venera 13. What humanity saw shattered the final illusions. There were no secret military outposts, no lush, misty tropical jungles. Under a jaundiced light, warped by the dense atmosphere, the picture revealed a bleak, orange wasteland of jagged volcanic rocks, hauntingly silent. That landscape isn't just a planetary surface. It is the remains, the soulless corpse of a world that once possessed vast oceans, just like Earth billions of years ago, before its own atmosphere turned traitor and boiled everything into oblivion. We began this journey with the illusion of a second Earth and the frantic pride of the Soviet Union. But in the end, what we brought back was not the glory of conquest. It was a forensic report of an extinction. The Soviets hurled their most advanced metallurgy into this physical slaughterhouse, only to leave behind nothing but titanium coffins. Even now, the machines that were once the pride of a superpower lie dead and broken on the scorched basalt. There will be no rescue mission. No world power dares to send another robot into that abyss. But the final image from Venera 13 serves as a chilling warning. Earth and Venus were born as twins, sharing the same starting line. If we were to boil our own atmosphere with our own hands, that desolate photograph wouldn't just be Venus's past, it would be Earth's future. Standing before the cosmos, this waterless ocean remains, the most brutal and perfect rejection of humanity's grand delusions. But Venera left behind one harder question. What kind of world can turn air into an ocean, warp sound into a whispering trap, and bend light until the horizon itself begins to close? Stay with me, because in the next chapter, we descend into the supercritical silence of Venus itself.